Everyone out there, thanks for joining us. We are currently in American Samoa off the, we just left port at Pago Pago, and we are currently diving down with Argus to begin some side scan mapping. That way we can start our search for the Samoan Clipper. We'll be doing some lawnmower pass, kind of back and forth, to create a nice detailed map, so that way our archaeologists and scientists can figure out what best sites we'd like to explore. Is there anyone from the science row interested in answering some questions? We have a few coming in.
Just a sec.
Okay.
everyone. My name is Dee Dee Marks, and I'm a maritime archaeologist, and let me know if you have any questions. I would love to answer them.
So we do have a question about what the strategy is kind of today using Argus and how we'll be kind of mapping and determining our sites.
Excellent. So we are using the system Argus, which has a side scan sonar mounted to it. A side scan sonar uses sound to image the seafloor, similar to a dolphin that echolocates. The system sends out sound waves that bounce off the seafloor and come back and are interpreted within a computer system, and we get to see a digital image of the seafloor. And by using that technology, we can find geologic features and also archaeological features like the Samoan clipper that we're looking for.
Great, thanks. We have a question for our ROV pilots if you guys are available.
Sure, go ahead.
We have a question about the sounds that Argus and Hercules make if one of them is potentially louder than the other when being operated.
Sure, okay. Argus is pretty quiet. It has 2 electric thrusters, which don't make a lot of noise. But Hercules is really loud. Hercules has a hydraulic pump powered by a high voltage electric motor, and that's really loud. And the fish don't seem to mind too much, as far as I've seen, but it is very loud. There's no hydrophones on either vehicle because they're both too loud for picking up valuable data in that sense. We're also pinging with a lot of sonars and stuff, so they all make noise. They're all sound-based, and they make their own higher or lower frequency sounds depending on what their settings are.
Great, thanks. Would anyone from the science tour like to ask answer a question? Well, right now we are descending Argus, and if you are just joining us, we're going to be using Argus to kind of go back and forth in a lawnmower type pattern to create a nice side scan sonar map. And we're actually going to be using that to try and identify some dive targets to help us in our search for the Samoan clipper. The Samoan clipper was a seaplane that crashed in 1938. Unfortunately, all passengers and crew members lost their lives during that time. And we are trying to be able to be the first to set eyes on that very important wreckage since then. We have the Air and Sea Heritage Foundation here who are helping conduct and lead this investigation, and they've been doing quite a bit of research into eyewitness accounts as well as other historical data and primary pieces of evidence to kind of start our search off of, I believe, Tapu Tapu Point in American Samoa. And as we continue to descend, we'll actually start to move around slowly to create that map and then watch to hopefully find our dive targets. We'll be doing so for about the next 24 hours. So we won't be using Hercules, we'll be using exclusively Argus as we tow it behind us, looking for those dive targets. So thanks for joining us. So we are continuing to descend Argus as we prepare to begin our side scan mapping of the area right outside of American Samoa. We're looking for the Samoan Clipper and continue to ask those questions that you have coming in. Thank you so much. We're not specifically looking for any undersea life at the moment as we conduct this, but of course if anything amazing pops up, we are never going to shy away from looking at it and enjoying all the wonderful things that exist in the bottom of the ocean, and we'd like to continue to go on our mission. Is there anyone from the first row, the science row, who'd like to maybe answer some more questions about the Samoan Clipper?
Give us a few seconds. We're getting set up, and we're going to be happy to answer some questions for you, so stand by.
Great. So we mentioned earlier the Argus dive will actually be going on for the next 24 hours. We will not be diving with Hercules until we finish that and identify some potential dive targets. So it will be just Argus for the time being. We're diving to a depth of about 3,300 meters. We're going to survey an area of about 2 square miles with about 300 meters spacing between each survey line. We're going to be going about 1.5 knots as we continue to survey. And we'll be staying about 10 to 20 meters off of the sea floor. So to tell you a bit more about the Samoan Clipper, for those of you joining us on our expedition, it was a 4-engine S-42B type flying boat. It was built by the Sikorsky Aircraft Corporation, and it had increased fuel capacity and wing area to tackle special long-range survey flights for Pan Am. The elite plane and crew were tasked to inaugurate the first regular airmail service between the United States and New Zealand, and on the morning of January 11th, 1938, the Samoan Clipper departed Pago Pago with about 751 pounds of express cargo, 2,300 gallons of gasoline, and for the 1,800-mile leg of the journey from Honolulu to Auckland. Unfortunately, as you all know, it did not make that. It was reported about into its flight that there was a oil leak. And then the captain, Mr. Ed Music, was making some emergency preparations and heading back towards Pago Pago. And as they continued to prepare, eyewitness account said and that the plane did land and or made an emergency landing, and then shortly after there was some type of explosion, and the parts of the plane did in fact sink. The wingspan for that plane, I believe, over 110 feet, so it was a pretty significant plane in terms of size. And unfortunately, as they did conduct their rescue efforts at the time, they did find different things to let them know that it was in fact the Samoan Clipper, and that it was the general area that it did sink, and it did not make its entire trip.
This is the science team. We're working out some, getting people set up with microphones, and then we'll be ready to answer some questions. But we are excited to have Argus heading to the seafloor to start our side scan sonar mapping.
We have a question about what we expect to find. from Mike, Missouri. Thanks for that question. And based on the eyewitness account, their plane did experience some type of explosion, but the wing of the aircraft was viewed from the eyewitness to be intact. So we don't expect to find the airplane all in one piece.
As the side scan sonar images the seafloor, we're going to be looking for anything that looks unnatural, man-made, straight lines. You know, that's what archaeologists will be looking at, and then marking targets to be able to go back with Hercules and see what those targets are. Side scan sonar is also used to map the seafloor for geologic features. But it's also very useful for shipwrecks and airplanes and other submerged archaeological features.
We had a great question come in about maybe an idea in terms of sediment for a wreckage like this. Is there maybe any type of anticipation and that maybe a significant amount of it might be covered, or is there any type of precedent in terms of what to expect when looking for a wreckage like this?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We're looking at a deep water environment, 2,000 to 3,000 meters, where there is a constant snowfall, as you would call it, falling down on the seafloor, and that leads to sediment building up, possibly covering portions of the site. So, we don't expect the site to be buried, but it could be, partially buried in variable levels. So that is definitely a possibility to consider.
We had another great question about when looking for a smaller target as a Samoan clipper compared to maybe a large geologic formation, are there any maybe specific patterns or shapes or things like that that you might specifically be looking for that might stick out to you as kind of an ideal target to look at or go back and dive with Hercules?
So eyewitness accounts lead us to believe that the Samoan clipper sank with possibly the entire wing structure intact. So that is the major component or feature that we're going to be trying to identify with the side scan sonar, and it would pick up the long straight edges of the leading and the back of the wing, and potentially the engines. As far as the other remains, there could be pieces that are larger and smaller and everything in between, but straight corners, things like that. But definitely the large wing structure is our most likely candidate for the targets.
If the wreckage is found, people are interested, are we potentially interested in recovering anything from the clipper?
At this point, we are looking at different options for potentially recovering small samples to help with corrosion analysis. This helps us with the site formation process, with how things corrode underwater, and potentially, the stability of the site underwater. At this point, that's the methodology that we're looking at. So that's a great question. And people think that items corrode quickly underwater and you should recover everything, but in fact, archaeological resources last a very, very long time underwater, and it's a very expensive process to conserve those as well.
For those that are asking, we're going to be about 10 to 20 meters actually off the seafloor as we do our sweeps back and forth, or at least Argus will. and that'll give us a nice enough depth where we're going to be able to get a pretty clear picture of what's down there in terms of the map, and help our archaeologists help identify where we should dive. We don't have an exact timeline for how long it may take us to find the wreckage. The ocean, as you all know, is a very vast and expansive area, and much of it is unexplored. And with that, things can happen quickly, or it can happen in a bit of a longer timeline than we anticipate. But the Air and Sea Heritage Foundation has done an excellent job doing research through all the primary documents and the eyewitness account and the cables that came out during the actual event in 1938 to put together a great area for us to begin our search. We have a question about towing Argus, and as if this is a similar type of search method that is used in other type of wreckages search, whether it be for a plane or a ship. We'll be towing Argus at about 1.5 knots through the length of this survey. And again, we'll be surveying for about the next 24 hours. That means that we'll be making passes back and forth. We will not be diving Hercules until after we've finished that. And as we tow Argus behind us, Argus has been modified with a slight fin for stability. So as we continue to move back and forth, Argus will continue to maintain its path instead of kind of weaving back and forth if you were to tow something in the water behind you. We have a great question coming in about why searching for these historic ships and aircraft wreckages are so important.
Well, I'd like to jump in there if I may. This is Russ Matthews, the president of Air Sea Heritage Foundation, and I want to welcome everyone here to the start of the search for Samoan Clipper. Though this actually is not the beginning. This began really 5 years ago, and it's involved the work of a lot of amazing people and organizations, and I want to take a moment just to acknowledge them as well. First off would be Dr. James Delgado, who first invited us to submit with him with ideas for exploration in the Eastern Pacific. And that was actually done at a workshop that was hosted by OET and NOAA in San Francisco, within sight of the old Pan Am Clipper base. We really wish he could be here with us. Unfortunately, he's, well, I don't know if unfortunate, but he's off doing other explorations. So we're all doing our thing. But we've had incredible support from the Pan Am Historical Foundation, the Igor I. Sikorsky Historical Archives, the University of Miami Libraries, the Pan Am Museum Foundation, and a host of individuals as well. Author John Krupnick and aviation historian John Hill, and archivist Dan Libertino, and so many more. Hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about each and every one of you as we continue this process. But yeah, back to the question. So why is it important? I feel that for myself, a real connection to those stories of the past. But through exploration, we're able to connect them with the present. We're able to reach back and touch those stories and those people and those events that really helped shape our world, and that we can still draw inspiration from in our own lives. And I was having a conversation with one of our science communication fellows earlier about this very thing, and how Music and his crew, they were pioneers, they were explorers, they were inventing a whole new way of traveling, of connecting the world, and bringing people together. And now we are following in their wake, and using different tools and in a different environment, but we're also explorers, and hoping to connect those two stories together. So yeah, I love this. This is everything that I dream about. This is history. This is exploration, and this is it's really a privilege to be sitting here right now with this team and on this ship, and with so many people around the world who are watching, who are participating, in this through telepresence. That was Dr. Ballard's vision. Back before the days that he ever even visited Titanic. To bring exploration into people's homes. That it's not just the privilege of a few that get to sit here on the site and be here, in the ship and feel the motion of the vessel around you. But you can come and join in this process. And right now, this is pure exploration. We are going out to try and find answers to questions people have been asking for 81 years. And now we have an opportunity to write the final chapter of the Samoan Clipper story. And it's tremendously exciting to be here, to look out on my way up to the control van. I could look over and see the island of Tutuila, and see Tapu Tapu Point, and all these landmarks and places that we researched about and read about, and had made our best estimates and guesses about what you might see there, and to look out and realize that yes, you can look out and you can see the island, and you can relate to the landmarks on shore and know this is what they were talking about. This is what the searchers who were here in 1938 could see, and why they felt that they were so close. They knew they had the area, and they had an idea that this is where it had all happened, but it was just out of their reach. And now we've come here with the technology that can bring us down there into the depths, and perhaps bring us the answers. So speaking of answers, I guess that answered your question and many more. So
It did. No, that was great. And we had another question that I'll answer just briefly, that we're currently going to search a survey area of about 2 square miles as we go about starting to side scan sonar. I did want to take a second and give everyone an opportunity to kind of quickly introduce themselves, say their name and their role here in the control van for this watch. And we'll be on from 12 to 4, both in the AM and PM here.
Well, I'm Russ Matthews, and I've hijacked Dr. Licklider Munden's seat for the time being. Yeah, so I'm sitting in the science lead seat, and this really is officially my spot for the 8 to 12 watch. But I just couldn't stay away, so here I am. But
seeing as how this is our first watch, I think it's allowed. This is Megan Licklider Munden. I'm watch lead for this watch. Also, we have Lonnie Short. Can you hear? And you're on?
You're good. Is Lonnie on as well?
Well, she's on, and I'm trying to get her to turn her microphone on.
Great. Well, Lonnie, I have a question for you in a moment after we finish.
well, yeah, Lonnie Shore is a aviation historian and architect and author, and many other things. But she did a lot of the original background research for this, and found a lot of the documents and the logs and the accident report and everything. So, are you now on your mic? Oh, we're still not hearing Lonnie.
We'll give her a second.
Sure.
Hi, this is Lonnie Shore. I'm on, and I'm thrilled to be part of this team. As Russ said, we started this project in 2014, and Russ charged me with digging up the clues to open the cold case that can now hopefully be solved with technology. So thanks for the opportunity to be here, Air Sea Heritage and OET.
Great. How about our pilots and our other engineers? Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'll start. My name is Renato Kane. I'm the navigator on this watch.
Hello.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name's Dan. I'm ROV team.
Summer, sitting over here in Argus seat on the ROV team as well. To you, Ed.
And I'm Ed McNichol. I'm the lead video engineer on this expedition, and myself and Stephen Matter will be switching this seat throughout the leg. We're not on any real watches. So.
And then in the back corner, I'm Peyton Lee. I'm your data logger.
Great. And I am Brian Soash. I am the lead science communication fellow, and I'm from Richmond Hill, Georgia.
Okay.
Lonnie, we had a question coming in from Andrew, and was asking kind of your thoughts as well. We got to hear from Russ about exploring and finding these historic wreckages, but they'd like to get your input as well about why going to all of these great lengths to find all this information about finding these wreckages is so important to you.
I'd love to answer that, Andrew. I think I know who you are. We're all explorers. We've been exploring since the time we were born. And to have lost some of our great pioneers in the field of aviation and the golden age of aviation, when they were establishing routes. This particular one was from Honolulu to Auckland via Kingman Reef and Pongo Pongo. To have lost them and not be able to answer the question is losing part of the tapestry of our civilization. And if we don't care about these things and don't go back to try to solve the history's cold cases with our new technology, then we're losing part of the inspiration to explore and answer questions and follow through. And I know if this is the Andrew, I think you are, that you're involved in that kind of thing as well. We've been on the Earhart team together. So thanks for the question. I think we're all out here to answer one of history's important questions. And of course, Edwin Music was Pan Am's most famous pilot. He was their chief pilot, and he won Harmon Trophy for being the world's most famous aviator, and there are a lot of families still connected to these music and his crew of 6. So we want to help solve that for the families, for aviation, and for exploration. So thanks for the question.
Thanks for that great answer. We are still putting Argus down so we can continue and begin our sonar mapping. We have capabilities, and Argus has the capability of going 6,000 meters below, while Hercules can go to a depth up to 4,000. If you're just joining us again, we're not using Hercules right now, we're using just Argus. We're using Argus as a tow fish to kind of go ahead and map that area. We are mapping an area about 2 square miles, traveling about 1.5 knots, and hanging out about 10 to 20 meters above the bottom of the ocean. And we're going to continue to do this for about the next 24 hours to identify hopefully some dive targets that we think might be the parts of the Samoan Clipper. We're hoping to be able to find and see, based on an eyewitness account, the wings of the plane, which, Russ, correct me if I'm wrong, you said it was 118 feet wide?
Yeah, 118 feet, 2 inches, yes.
Yes, I was so close. And be able to hopefully identify that, as well as some possible other targets. Based on the eyewitness account, the plane did in fact make an emergency landing and then suffered a explosion upon doing so. So we're not expecting to find the wreckage all in one piece. We're expecting there to be at least the wings and then possibly some other components based on where they settled on the seafloor, and the type of damage that may have happened from that explosion. I have a great question that came in about wreckages types such as these. The Samoan Clipper, I believe, was made of wood, correct?
No, actually.
Oh, I was wrong.
It was aluminum construction.
Okay.
An aluminum frame with aluminum skin riveted, and the wing was a double spar stressed skin construction as well. I do believe the outer portions of the wing would have been outboard of the engines were fabric covered,
okay,
to save weight, and as well as the control surfaces. So the tail, like the rudders and the tails, the vertical tails and the horizontal tail, and the elevators would have been fabric covered.
Okay.
Because these were, like, especially the control surfaces, it's all muscle powered, with just control cables. So it saved weight and saved the pilot's strength. To use lighter weight materials like that. But there is some recent discoveries. It's been very rare that that they've found aircraft wreckage at this depth, but there have been some remarkable discoveries in recent years, including
yes. Yeah, excuse me. There was just a flickering, I think, of our lights on Argus. Did you see that?
Yeah, correct. The portside cathex or whatever, boomer as I call it,
does that occasionally.
It's been doing that occasionally. We've been power cycling it too.
All right, great, thanks. Sorry to interrupt you there, Russ.
Sorry, wrong button.
No worries.
And actually, I did have a question on the construction, Russ.
Sure.
The propellers, wouldn't they have been wood?
No, those
really?
were those. Megan, do you know the?
Yes, but just not right now.
Well, they were not wood.
They were not wood, no.
Okay.
It was a 3-bladed propeller.
Yes, Hamilton standard, but
that was definitely aluminum.
Yes.
Can I jump in with a question of my own?
Of course.
Russ, you mentioned stress skin. Could you talk a little more about what that is?
Oh, that's yeah, that's a good question. Megan, do you want to field this one?
Just to speak.
Please, everybody chime in and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but basically stress skin just means almost exactly what it sounds like is the material was pre-stressed before they actually put it on the wing so that it was a little bit harder, a little bit more durable.
Gotcha. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no problem.
Well, I think we probably have a lot of...
I think it was also over the rivets.
Right.
So you didn't see, made it smooth.
I think that was the flush rivet.
The flush rivet.
Yeah, that's flush rivet.
The flush rivet, right.
Well, I'm sure we probably have some aviation experts listening in who will be happy to provide us with more precise definitions if we need it. So
We had another outstanding question come in, and this is open to anyone who might be able to answer. But for a wreckage like this, because of the material it's made out of, as we talked about, it's made out of metal, would we expect to find maybe different organisms or different types of things maybe around different substances that maybe a wreckage that was made out of metal as opposed to one that was made out of wood?
Well, in this case, because of the depth, we're not expecting a lot of marine organisms to have grown, to have attached themselves to the wreck.
To the bottom.
Because one, it's so deep, and there's no light that penetrates down here, so you're not going to see it festooned with coral or sponges or things like that. I mean, on shallower wrecks, yes, they are very happy to grow and attach themselves and
I think you said
incorporate these aircraft into the natural environment. But we don't anticipate that we're going to see anything.
So we use the
like
sub bottom
that.
until we get
Maybe,
contact, then until we see
there
bottom,
may be,
and then switch to the altimeter.
Fish and other organisms that have made it a home.
They'll put the edge tech
like
on.
to use the shelter of the wreck itself.
And just going over a little bit on the difference between aircraft as archaeology wrecks and what people normally know as archaeology wrecks, which are ancient shipwrecks, vintage shipwrecks or whatnot, cannons of that sort, steel shipwrecks.
I just turn it off.
So what steel and wood do underwater is very different than what aluminum does underwater, and we will probably see a little bit of that in action. We actually rarely get much growth on aircraft anywhere except for a couple of places in the Pacific, which are normally shallow. So the sort of growth that you see on top of steel or iron structures is just simply not here on these types. And you won't get the deterioration that you see where a wooden shipwreck would be almost completely gone. We will have, and that's the thing, is that it's because of the depth here, we're much more likely to see organic matter still on the wreckage, like the flight control surfaces. There have been other aircraft found at this depth with that material still existing. We've seen parachute matter on aircraft wrecks this deep and all kinds of other organic materials. So we'll probably still see that, although it will maybe be degraded. And then a lot also depends on the currents at depth, the sort of sand scouring, and the bacterial sort of decay that's going on as well. We won't know any of that until we get down there.
Okay, thank you for those answers. That was great. So there's potentially, if and when the vessel is, or the aircraft is found, there might be quite a bit more of it preserved than one might think for something that's been down there so long.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, we're in recent years, as Megan indicated, last March of 2018, the crew of RV Petrel located the wreck of USS Lexington, an American aircraft carrier that was sunk at the Battle of the Coral Sea in 1942. And there were still aircraft from the Lexington Air Group that were on the flight deck when the ship went down, and they landed in the debris field surrounding the wreck, and the level of preservation on those planes was astonishing. You could see the paintwork was bright. You could see the national insignia, read the fuselage codes and the squadron markings on the sides of the planes, and as Megan mentioned, the doped fabric control surfaces with these. The rudder had these distinct red and white, 13 red and white stripes that looked like they had been painted there the day before. It was just speechless almost to see that that wreck in that condition, and so it does give you pause to think, like, could that same level of preservation prevail here? We're not, relatively not that far from that area of the South Pacific, and we're in comparable depths, and Lexington went down only 4 years after the loss of Samoan Clipper, so it's easy to and it may be wishful thinking and to some degree, but to think that those conditions may prevail here. Though I do recall that some of the aircraft, the ones that were more exposed to heat and fire, looked more degraded. The SPDs were in worse shape than the Devastators,
and that's the sort of, so if you have aircraft material, if you compromise it before you drop it, basically, then it's going to accelerate the natural decay process underwater.
So yeah, so we don't know, and again, it's a lot of the times we're going to say the same thing over and again. We won't know until we actually get there and see it. But we don't know how much the fire and explosion on board Samoan Clipper may have affected the material.
Right. Oh, you need that one.
And Russ, we've got Bill Carter listening and enjoying the expedition as well.
Well, welcome aboard, Bill. Bill is another of the co-founders of Air Sea Heritage Foundation, and it's great to have him here with us virtually.
Can you tell us a bit more about the Air Sea Heritage Foundation and the passion you all have and kind of how you do what you all do?
Absolutely. It was founded officially in 2016, but it comes out of just a love for aviation and maritime history, and a way to advance that and to study and investigate and help preserve the wrecks and the relics and the sites and the stories associated with our aviation and maritime past, and it's something that I did together, with Bill Carter and with Peter Fix as the original co-founders. But it was really a way to get to do the things that we love with people that we admire and enjoy doing this kind of work with, and that who share that passion and that desire to do what we feel is very important work. Officially, our first project was in October of last year, doing a survey of some historic World War II wrecks at Jalloet Atoll in the Marshall Islands, and we did a very extensive survey of photography, still photography, video, 4K video, 3D photogrammetry, virtual reality, and subsea LiDAR. That was again, a fantastic opportunity to do good work with people that I really admire and who are extremely talented at what they do, and now here we are again, with Nautilus and embarking on another adventure. And this one is particularly special because we are going potentially into the unknown. Well, we're going into the unknown and potentially making a new discovery and advancing our knowledge of history. So yeah, I hope that about covers it. So.
We have a question to the group. Anyone experiencing seasickness yet?
No.
Everybody feeling good?
No, feel fresh. Feel
Not
good.
on this watch.
We're all good.
Yeah, thanks
So
for
far,
bringing it
pretty
up
good.
when I'm sitting in this dark room, looking at a computer screen. But no, actually feeling very good right now. When we first left the harbor, fortunately I had enough sense to take my Dramamine an hour before we were scheduled to depart, but it really actually brought home when we left the harbor. So we were moored in the inner harbor. And then moved out, and as soon as we made that turn, you could feel the ocean swell coming in and greeting us, and it realized that's why they chose the inner section of the harbor for the landing area for the Clipper, because it would have been very vulnerable to those kind of swells especially on landing, and so they wanted that calm water on the inner part of the harbor, But yeah, we got outside and we were rocking and rolling just a little bit, as we made our way south and out and around, because the harbor entrance at Pongo Pongo faces south, so we had to go out there and work our way west around to and then round the point at Tapu Tapu and come north here. But fortunately, that swell seemed to be coming up from the southeast, so we've got the whole of the island of Tutuila blocking it. And we're in its lee here, so the ride is a lot more comfortable, a lot more smooth at the moment. Especially we're only doing, I think, 1.5 knots anyway. So, but the seas are really cooperating with us, and I hope they continue.
So some of the fans of the Air and Sea Heritage Foundation, based on your awesome explanations, have wondered, assuming if you were able to look for the next big search, what would be kind of your top search next to look for?
Well, I don't know. I feel like I'm the guy, in the, that they're in the playoffs for the Super Bowl, and then they ask them about next year or what the Super Bowl. And it's well, we got to get there first. I got to win this game, coach. And then we'll think about the next one. So yeah, we obviously our priority right now is Samoan Clipper. But yeah, I've got some ideas, for some other aircraft, some other ships that would be fascinating to look for and to investigate. But yeah, really right now, it's all about Samoan Clipper and doing everything we can to find that and share it with the world and bring hopefully bring some closure to the families and the extended Pan Am family and the aviation historic community as well. So. I know I ducked that question, but
no, it's okay.
We got 6 days out here.
No,
so,
you were right on target. We wouldn't expect anything less from you. Eyes on the prize. And this question's kind of open up to anyone who might be able to answer, including our pilots. With our our side scan sonar and Argus at this depth, is there kind of a general size of an object that might begin to show up? In terms of, we could maybe find something or be able to easily see something the size of a basketball, a car.
The scientific answer is it depends. I'll refer to some of the experts in the room for that.
Yeah. The altitude, I guess we chose to tow the Argus at is going to be about 30 meters, and then we're just going to kind of fine tune it from there. So obviously the closer you get to the bottom, the better resolution you're getting back and data. So
yeah, and the way side scan works is we're kind of looking at oblique angles and we're looking at shadow, so it depends on how far up an object is sticking out off the seafloor, and therefore how much of a shadow it casts, and also what the material is made of in comparison with what the seafloor around it is made of. If it is metal, it's going to reflect back more than the soft sediment in the background. So you'll see kind of, those are the two indicators, basically the relief and the brightness, but also the shape of it as well is kind of an indication. So even if we if we have those first two indicators, and they're, you know, it's giving us kind of an indication of what something is, the shape will definitely help. So as someone mentioned earlier, linear features, lines, they'll help out.
That's a great answer. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, they did some tests off of Catalina Island, you know, just before the beginning of the season, and I believe they ran lines on a target that was maybe only about 1 or 2 meters, you know, in size, and picked it out quite easily. So, you know, we're optimistic that it'll be able to distinguish the kind of debris that would be associated with Samoan Clipper, and there's a good chance that we're going to have larger objects. You know, I think there was mention earlier about how the eyewitness described the wings of the airplane at the surface for about 5 minutes or so before it sank from sight.